If you've seen Cosmoetica, you know that I've promoted a black poet named James Emanuel. He died about 8 or 9 years ago. He was a great poet. He lived 90 plus years. He had an interesting story. But if you're promoting Maya Angelou shit poetry or Alice Walker shit poetry, and you're putting them in the quote unquote canon because simply of their skin color, you're doing a disservice to not only the future readers by putting crap out there, but what you're doing by not having the James Emanuels, an actual great poet who happens to be black, you're screwing him too, and you're screwing the readers because he deserves to be there because of what he wrote, not because of his skin color. And this is something people don't get. Oh, Dan, how can you say that? Well, I've read the poetry of Black Dorgulus and White Dorgulus, and no one's a bigger critic of people like Donald Hall, a bad white poet who died recently, or Robert Bly. No one's a bigger critic of David Foster Wallace or the guy who wrote what was Dave Eggers, or all of these terrible white male writers. But the solution to the old boy network is not to create a new girl network of bad PC writers. It's to actually focus on the good writing. Get rid of the Foster Wallaces, get rid of the Maya Angelous, and put in the Maya Angelous, and put in the James Emanuels, and a writer like me or my wife Jessica. That's how you do it. You don't just start segregating again. And this is one of the problems with a lot of political liberals. And I consider myself a progressive, and I don't want to get off into political rant, but one of the problems with a lot of liberals is that they embrace a lot of the things that 50 years ago they would have railed against coming from conservatives. And it's human, and I know why people do that and why they want to boost this or that thing. We want to know about transsexuals, or we want to know about Sikh religion or whatnot. I did a whole show on the religion of Sikhism or whatnot. But you have to do things like that with the intent of putting the things out there and letting people decide. I can't say, for example, I can't comment on Indian society, India, and say, well, Sikhism is better than Hinduism because of A, B, or C. I might think that the Jains are better than that, but still, you put it out there, and someone is going to take it. What you think pro or con, for example, of True Life is going to be maybe slightly different than someone else who might get something else from it, and that should be acknowledged.
All right, so real quick, I know you're on a tangent, but there was something you mentioned about David Foster Wallace, Dave Eggers, and Robert Bly. One of the reasons I know these names now is because of you and Cosmoetica, and you did talk about it some in your memoirs. And I know we want to talk about the memoirs, but real quick, it was funny because when I was in college, David Foster Wallace is a god. He's a god. You don't say anything negative about him. They have that stupid. I'm not sure if you've seen his speech about "This is water." Have you seen that? Yeah. That's like they just pulled up on YouTube. They're like, "Say no more." I mean, it's like, all right. And I never read him. Like his. It's funny because you write essays, he writes essays. I read one of his essays, and it was just like it was masturbatory. It was really, I don't know. Anyways, the first time I ever heard a negative word about DFW, whatever his name is, it was from you, and it was fascinating because as soon as you said it, it was like it gave me permission to criticize this man. And all of a sudden, I started thinking about all the things I heard him say, the little bit that I read by him, and I was like, oh my god. It is bad. Everything you wrote is bad. So it seems that we're in this weird point. I don't think people want to promote David Foster Wallace because they know it's bad art. I think they're incapable of doing it. Obviously, if poetry is the highest form of art, it's also going to be the most intellectual. So these things will not be very easy to determine the quality. Not very. Well. Obviously, so you need a good critic, whatnot.
And just a quick point. No one should ever give you or any other reader or any other arts fancier permission to do things. That's a very politically correct term, and I know why you used it. But the whole notion is just so ridiculous because as a thinking being, and you're engaging art, whether it's song, whether it's even dance or acting, or whether it's the more creative arts like painting, film, uh, various forms of literature, or classical music. You 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 don't need permission. I just as I don't need permission, for example, to write about the Native American encounters with Vikings and do it from a Native American's perspective. I don't need anyone's permission. I don't need that tribe's permission, you know. And if someone criticized me, I'd say, "Oh, okay." I said, "So you don't want me to write about your tribe meeting the Vikings? You do it. And if you're not going to do it, or you don't have anyone capable to do it, then don't complain about it." Now, if you say that you think my characterization is bad, or that I got certain things wrong, well, okay, that's fine. But this is another thing too. When you write, for example, the most important thing is character, because all art, all drama, or it's all about character. Plot is character, as I've said, or character is plot. If, for example, I wrote about the the Congolese people of 1,000 years ago, or one of the ancient African kingdoms, excuse me, and let's say I wrote, I'd write something like, they are in typical attire of their era, because I'm not going to go looking around what types of sandals they might have worn, or what types of tunics or whatever they might have, or loincloths or whatnot. That ultimately is unimportant. Just like if I'm writing about gangsters from the late 20th century here in the U.S., I don't have to tell you about every little farting mafia kind of code word or whatnot. You have an idea. If I say to you a Spartan warrior, you're going to get a certain image. If I say to you Marilyn Monroe, you're going to get an image. Whether you think Marilyn Monroe is beautiful or not, whether you think the Spartans look silly or not, it is going to be there. And so if I say, Apache warrior from the 17th century or something, you're going to have a certain idea of what they probably looked like. That they may not look in your mind as they actually did. Maybe there's a 10-15% difference. Who cares if the story is good enough? And this is where people focus on the wrong things. If I'm writing, say, a historical novel about, say, Dwight Eisenhower, who was the head general of the American forces in World War II and later became president, I have to hew more to the known facts. But if I'm writing about Shaka Zulu, a famous warrior from Africa, a couple of hundred years ago when he battled, I guess it was the English or the Boers or whatnot, do I really need to know if Shaka Zulu, had, 10 concubines or 100? Is that real? People may not know because it's not as recorded and well recorded as, say, even something from 1,000 years ago from ancient China. It doesn't matter. That's focusing on the wrong thing. And people always do this, and you'll get these little gotcha moments where people will, let's say it's a great novel someone wrote, and someone will focus on, well, it's a good novel or it's a good film or whatnot, but the way that the clothing was portrayed, or the way that the accents that they used weren't quite that way. It's like you're missing the fucking point, because if you're focusing on that, you're not really giving due to the artist. If you're going to criticize an artist, at least have the decency to, if I'm reading a piece of shit by David Foster Wallace, I actually read it. There are many times I've read reviews of things where the person clearly didn't read it, because you can read in a paragraph or two, that didn't happen in the book. What often happens, I don't know if you've ever seen this in reviews, is people will start cribbing other people's reviews. So let's say you write a review and you get a fact point wrong about a film that you saw. I'm some idiot who's lazy and has an online site. I don't watch the whole movie. Maybe I get bored halfway through, and yet I take a few points that you made in your film. One of them is wrong, and I repeat that. And someone does that to me, and onward and onward. This is why you often get movies, great films, with stuff that isn't correct. A good example is there are a few films where characters don't have names, like Michelangelo Antonioni's film Blow Up. The characters don't have any names, but people keep writing the same stuff, that the character was named this, that, or the other thing, because a bad review looked at, for example, the film's promotional material and saw that in the promotional material, originally the character was going to have a name, but the name is never used on screen, so the character doesn't have a name. And so this is the way people, you get a lot of bad art and bad criticism, is that people just repeat the same bad things because they're lazy.